Hello again, guys. So today we're going to cover a new topic, which is past perfect. It is basically the same structure as present perfect, and it shares some of the same uses, only in past. We're going to go ahead and explain everything in detail, so strap in and let's go ahead and start. So first off, we want to get the structure out of the way. The structures are one of the main things that we need to understand if we want to be able to form sentences properly. Okay, so if we know the structure for present perfect, this is going to be a piece of cake. The only thing we need to change is our auxiliary, which was have and has. We're going to change that into its past form, which is had. So we're going to go really quick over this affirmative structure, which is subject, had, the verb in past participle, very important to remember that, and our complement. If we want to make this into a negative, the only thing we have to add is not to our had. So we need to make sure that it's our negative, okay? And if we want to make it into a question, we're going to do the same switch we always do. We're going to switch the subject with our auxiliary. So now we're going to start with had and then move on to the subject itself. All right, so here are some examples. Go over these examples, practice the structure as many times as you need because it is very, very important. Speaking of important, we also need to memorize or remember at least that we have contractions. So here our friend Inosuke is going to mention, I'd sold my car, so I walked home. So we can see right there he's using I'd, which is the contraction between the pronoun I and the word had. Here we have some more contractions underneath, you'd, we'd, I'd, etc. So it's very important for you guys to make sure that if you want to apply it, you're applying it in the proper way. And if you see it, you know that it can be the contraction of you and had, not to be confused with you and would. The context is what's going to tell you which one it is. We also have hadn't for our negatives. So make sure that you're using contractions properly. On the same note of important aspects of past perfect, we need to always make sure that we remember irregular verbs since they are very, very common. A lot of the main important things that we say or we do daily, like eating, sleeping, etc., or doing, all of these are irregular verbs. So we need to make sure that we do know a lot of them. So we can never stop practicing if we do not have a vast control over several irregular verbs. If you're making sentences, try to always have a piece of paper with a list of irregular verbs next to you, or just have your phone handy so you can go into and just research any irregular verb that you're having trouble with, but make sure that you're always using the past participle. What do we express with past perfect? So now that we got the structure out of the way, let's go into the why we apply this tense. Okay, so we want to apply this tense just to indicate that one action finished before another point in the past. Okay, so this is one of the main uses. We also usually use the past perfect to make clear which action happened first. Okay, so maybe we are already talking about something in the past and we want to mention something else that is further back in time. So with this, we're going to be using our past perfect. And it doesn't matter which one we mention first. Just by using past perfect, it's going to be completely clear which action happened first. So let's dive into a few examples so we can really see this and how it's applied. So right here in this example slide, we have past simple in black and past perfect in red. So it's a little bit easier to identify. Here we see the first example, which says when we arrived, the, wait, let me move something here. Sorry, something was in the way of my reading. When we arrived, the film had started. Which action happened first? Well, the film started and then we arrived. Okay, just by looking at the tense, the context is going to tell us that the past perfect one is the one that started first. I eaten dinner, so I wasn't hungry. Which happened first? Did he eat dinner or was he hungry? or I mean, he wasn't hungry. First, he ate dinner, so he wasn't hungry as a consequence. It had snowed in the night, so the bus didn't arrive. Did it snow first, or did the bus not arrive? Well, first, it snowed, and that's why the bus didn't arrive. All right, so this is just a question of context. By using past perfect, automatically people are going to understand that that action happened before the other one. So it gives it priority over past simple. Here in this slide that has more examples, this is just these are just sentences without a lot of context. It's just so we see the structure and we get to analyze it a little bit more. So we can see in bold, we have had, and then we have the verb in past participle, which is underlined. So we have the affirmatives. We're going to read a couple. Some students had passed the semester. We'd gone to Disneyland that year. Negatives, Tanjiro hadn't kissed Ganao. I think Mexico hadn't participated in the World Cup. And in questions, had you finished the project? Why had people studied online? All right, so again, these sentences might need a little bit more context. Yes, they do, but we're just checking the structure out. So that's why they're on their own. So you guys can see the structure and just practice them. One tip that I would give you is copy these sentences and put the structure that we saw underneath the sentence separated by the structure so you can get the practice. It's very important to always know that when we're doing questions, if we have a WH question word, that's always going to have priority over everything else. So the structure remains the same. We just put the WH question word at the beginning of the sentence. So we have, where had you gone for lunch? Right? So moving on, here are more examples. In this case, event A is always going to be the one that started. So our event A is our past perfect. And then event B is the one that was second to it or more recent. And that's going to be our past simple. Okay, so we can analyze the first one. John had gone out when I arrived in the office. It's always just as easy as asking yourself, like, what happened first? Did John go out or did I arrive to the office? So John wasn't even there when I arrived to the office, right? So he went out first. So you just have to ask yourself those types of questions, and you're gonna reach the answer. Like, oh, okay, so that's the proper use. So the second one says, I had saved my document before the computer crashed. So again, which happened first, the computer crash or did I save my document? And in the bottom two, we can see that it doesn't really, like we already mentioned, it doesn't matter which one we use at the beginning. We can start with past simple. We can say when they arrived, we had already started cooking, right? It doesn't matter if we start with past perfect or past simple. The context is going to tell us which action happened first. Like, for example, the last one, he was tired because he hadn't slept well. What happened first? Was he tired or he didn't sleep well? Obviously, he didn't sleep well, and as a consequence, he was tired. So that action happened first. So one of the other uses that we want to focus on a little bit is that we can use the past perfect and the same way we use the present perfect, right? So we can use it to express how long something happened. The only difference would be that this action finished in the past. So I can say I have lived in Tijuana for 5 years, and that is still present, right? That still applies to right now. I still live in Tijuana, but if I say I had lived in Tijuana for 5 years, I that means I do not live in Tijuana anymore. Okay, so that happened and finished in the past. Now I live in San Diego, let's say. All right. And we usually use these with the word for and a time reference, any time that we want to specify. So we can analyze this in the next slide where we have some examples. So our first example would be when he graduated, he had been in London for 6 years. Okay. And when we can see right there, he arrived in London 6 years before he graduated and lived there until he graduated, or even longer, right? So there we can see in the examples. The second one would say, on the 20th of July, I'd worked there for 3 months. Okay, so this happened and finished in the past. It's not relevant right now. This doesn't apply to right now. This was on the 20th of July. Right now, let's say it's not even July, at least for when I'm recording this, it's not even July. We're in May, so it had a lot more months passed, almost a year after. And the last one would say by the age of 6, I had learned how to swim for 1 year. So by the age of 6, he had already been practicing for a year. Okay, so that's the main other use that we can give it, just to express for how long something happened if the event finished in the past. If it's still relevant to this day, then we're going to use present perfect. So it's very important to differentiate between those uses. And just very important, just a quick wrap up is going to be this. Just remember that we need to use had and the verb in past participle. So very important to remember the structures. It expresses an event that happened before another one in the past. That's kind of the main use that we give it. And we have to be very careful when we're using it. Depends on the context, right? Other, like we saw in the sentences that were single, the tense that we were using, which was past perfect, might have not been the most indicated one. We might want to use past simple if we're just throwing out like a regular simple sentence. If we're adding more context to that sentence, then we might want to use past perfect if we want to express that something happened before another action. But if you just want to express that something happened in the past, then we would want to stick to past simple. Okay, so depending on our context and what we want to express is the tense that we're going to use. If we use past perfect, we want to always add something else to the context, either a time reference, so they know that it happened before another period of time. All right. So at we reached the end. If you guys have any questions, again, feel free to send me a message to my email. Send me a message to our group chat, and I'll be more than happy to answer it as soon as possible. All right. So again, thank you for joining and paying attention to this presentation. Thank you for the ones that joined the Zoom session. And I'll just leave you with these references in case you want to go ahead and look for more information on the topic. I did not use all the information, nor did I use all of the different uses that you can give past perfect. I only focused on the ones that we saw in the book to make it easier. Okay, so if you want to learn a little bit more about the topic, again, go to the links. I want to thank you one more time for paying attention to the Zoom session and to this video, and I will see you next time. See you guys, take care and stay safe. Stay in your house. Peace.